Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. This is going to be a little bit of an update. As you guys will know who watched my last video, I've had some engine troubles, and because of that I actually had to order a new set of cylinders. They still haven't arrived, and so I thought I would start picking away at a few things on the X2 that need to be done. And because I'm a little bit obsessive, I actually got a little bit carried away, and I'll show you guys what I got carried away with right now. This is the stator that I was using on the 1100, and I took it off, and as soon as I took it off, I noticed that this thing is quite heavy. It is 4 pounds, 4.0 ounces, which is 1,928 grams. Well, that's a lot of weight for one single component. And although this might not be a good idea, I've thought about doing this for quite a while. And so here is the result of my weight obsession. I've cut away a bunch of material. I did the math and figured out that even if this thing made, like, I forget what it is, but even if it made something ridiculous like 3,000 watts, which I think it makes maybe 300 watts, if that, it would only be about 3.5 foot-pounds of torque on this assembly. So I left some of the webs in. It is supported at 3 points where it bolts on, and I cut away a bunch of the rest of the material. I also left a bunch around where the starter Bendix support goes, so that this will go on here like so, and it will still support the end of the starter Bendix, because if it wasn't supported, it would very quickly snap off or just not work altogether. All right, just in case anyone's curious, I'll actually weigh some of this stuff separately. I'll weigh the aluminum part itself is 1 pound 5.2 ounces. Or 602 grams. Okay, I've got all of the screws and washers and all that stuff, the spring, and the total weight is 2 pounds 15.5 ounces, basically 3 pounds, and 1,346 grams. That is quite a bit of weight savings. Now getting on to things that are a little bit more practical. As you guys can see, my hood is sitting on the floor with a pile of fiberglass dust beside it. I should probably be spending my time working on this. I've cut these holes out so that they are matched up all the way through. These were butchered holes. Whoever had drilled it out before had just used one drill bit and drilled a series of holes and then like knocked the piece out with a hammer or something. So it was all chewed up. It looked like it had been chewed by an angry beaver with rabies. I made a cardboard template and cut them all out the same and tried to line them up. So now I need to figure out a way to mold a piece of fiberglass into there. The reason why I haven't finished this is because I haven't really figured out how to make that shape the way that I want it. I could make a mold and then go crazy and mold a tube and fit it in there and then epoxy it in place, but I'm trying not to go way over the top because it is a fairly simple part. It doesn't need to be complicated. I've also done some fiberglass repairs. I've patched up this. Actually, what started it is I patched these two spots here, one there and one here. I haven't done much sanding on this one yet. And I had some leftover epoxy. I miscalculated it. And previously this had just been filled in with thickened epoxy, but I wasn't happy with that. So I took a grinder. I don't know what I used. Yeah, I used that actually. Took my mini belt sander and I ground all that thickened epoxy out, and then I actually laid fiberglass in there. So I've been using this horse file. I did some work for a guy a couple of years ago and he gave me this file that they use for horses' hooves. It's probably used for lots of other things. I use it for tons of stuff. I use it for carpentry and drywall work. And today I've used it for doing some fiberglass filing. What happened was I was putting the fiberglass on and it was sagging and running down. So I built it up quite a bit too high so that I could file it back. But just using sandpaper to file it or to sand it down takes forever. And this thing takes the material off really quickly. You can see the kind of consistency that it takes the stuff off as. I also took about half an hour and machined these down a little bit. You guys wouldn't know this because I didn't tell you in a video, but this surf brace mount that I made was actually sitting a little bit low, and it was making the bracket, the 3D printed bracket on the surf brace. Let's see, which one is it? This one here. It was actually rubbing on the exhaust, and it self-clearanced a little bit there. So what I did is I machined off probably 1/8 of an inch, a little more than 1/8 of an inch on the bottom. Actually, you can see here on this side, it's got this little step. Well, this one used to have that step. And now it is straight across. I also machined off this part on the top on both of them because it didn't need to be there. It was just causing extra or adding extra weight. So I machined off on the top on both of them. And the reason why this one still has this space coming down is now they're actually at the same height because the chassis brace, this aluminum chassis brace actually mounts underneath this plate. So because I can't fit one on this side, these are now at the same height. So if I ever put a chassis brace on this side, I can then machine that off flat and they'll be at the same height again. I considered doing some really crazy stuff. I was going to remove the steering plate, the aluminum plate here on the bottom. I was gonna remove that and machine off all of the aluminum that house the old electronics that are no longer needed. There's a bunch of little things on the bottom of this plate that aren't needed. And then I got thinking about making this piece here, the squirrel cage steering stuff. I was thinking about making those out of carbon fiber, and I was just like, whoa, hold on a second, Joel. You've got a bunch of other stuff to do before you go about doing that. Look at this contraption. This is a bicycle inner tube that I cut. I've got some tape around the end there to try to force it to swell up here, which now that I see that it's kind of working, I'm going to put more tape on it. Okay, look at this now. I've got some red electrical tape wrapped around this, and so now it just swells up in that area. And I think this might work. It's probably going to leave some little gaps in the corners there, but I can deal with that. I might actually be able to kind of wiggle things around and seat that in place. I don't want to overinflate it too much and try to force it in because it might blow the tube up. This is what I've come up with. I've got the tube inside a piece of plastic that is taped off at the diameter that I want it to expand to. And I've got the fiberglass cloth. There's, I don't know, 9 layers of this really thin stuff. It's about 3/4 of a millimeter. And so what I plan on doing is wetting that out on this plastic surface or a plastic surface, and then basically loosely wrapping it around the outside of this plastic, sliding the plastic in, and then putting the tube inside of the plastic and inflating it. And hopefully that works. Now got the fiberglass all wet out, except for the edge, which doesn't matter because I'm not going to use this to cut off. I've removed the top layer of plastic, so what I need to do now is get it wrapped around this layer of plastic, shove everything inside of there, put the tube inside of the plastic, and inflate it so that it hopefully holds everything in place. And this is where everything can get really messy and go very wrong. I now have the fiberglass wrapped around the plastic sleeve. Okay, here it is. We set it to try to film. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now I can grab the camera and show you guys what I've done. It looks like it's gonna work, folks. This crazy idea might actually work. If you guys have ever seen anybody use this method before, you let me know. But it's working. It inflated. The fiberglass is pushed out. It's not seated perfectly in everywhere. There are some small gaps, but I am perfectly happy with that. I'm going to be left with a fiberglass tube that is the way closer to the shape that I could have done if I laid it by hand, and a little bit of thickened epoxy in around these corners, and I will have something that actually is a little bit structural to the hood and seals it up well. What do you guys think? As the epoxy was setting up, I realized that I might want a little extra clearance underneath the hood and have the bottom of the intake tube flat. So what I did is I got a piece of board, I wrapped it in a piece of plastic so that the epoxy wouldn't stick to it. And then I got a metal plate, an aluminum plate, which you can actually see here. I put it on top of the wood that is wrapped in plastic against the tube. And then I put a couple of batteries and this flywheel sitting on top of the metal plate so that it's holding the tube basically in a, I don't know what you would call it, kind of a D shape, I guess, if you looked at it from the end. But basically the metal plate and the board are holding the tube flat on the bottom, which will give me a little bit more clearance in that area. Not sure if this matters if I need it, but I'd rather do it now and not need it than not have done it and needed it. So there we go. The tube is a little bit stuck to some of the epoxy in there apparently. Oh, there we go. I will be cutting this off flush with the hood and putting some thickened epoxy around the outside of these edges. I'll also put some here and here. Oh yeah, it's gonna come right out, I think. Got my hand in the tube, grabbing the plastic, and it actually comes out quite easily. After a few minutes with a hacksaw blade, there is the excess piece. This is still very uncured. It was very gummy to cut off. And there is the opening, nice large opening. I'm gonna have to do some more trim work, but yeah, that is it. I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm not 100% sure how this works from the factory, but I will give you the way that I think maybe it works. What I do know for sure is that there is an air inlet here from the factory, and air and water will come in there. You only want the air making it in underneath the hood. So what they do is they make the air passage go up over this little hill, and the air can come out here, but no water will go through there because it has to go up over the hill. The water goes down through this channel and comes out over here, out through the side of the hood. Now, the part that I don't know is what this lower section is for, because my understanding was that they didn't have any tube that I made here. Maybe they have one, but it's just smaller. Either way, there's basically that same set of channels. So the way it's gonna work for me is a whole bunch of air, and if I flip it upside down, water can go in here. So when I flip it back upright, the idea is that the water will go to the low section, which is here, and it can dump out through here, which exits out through the side of the hood at the front. And this has to go up over this hump before it can come in underneath the hood. So this is basically to separate the air and the water. And the reason why this is bigger is because somebody had modified mine in the past. I don't know if the factory even has an inlet through here, but yeah, you guys let me know. Maybe I'll look at some pictures and figure it out for myself, but yeah, this is quite a bit bigger. Somebody had modified it before with an ABS pipe, which wasn't very big. It was 1.5 inside diameter, I think. And it was butchered quite badly. So I made this. This will flow lots of air and should still separate the water or most of the water out. So I'm very happy with this. I do realize that the footage for this part was a little over the top and perhaps excessively long, but I'm pretty excited about the way this turned out. I'm not 100% finished finishing the part. I am going to sandblast it and kind of take off some of the edges and stuff just so it looks a little bit more uniform and matches the rest of the engine. I am worried a little bit about how this is going to dissipate heat. As I stated in the video, I'm not too worried about the actual physical load on it, but the stator is going to have to get rid of the heat that it makes from producing the electricity to charge the battery and power the bilge pump. Fortunately, those two things don't draw a lot of power, and so hopefully the stator is able to cool enough that I don't actually have problems with my stator burning out. If it happens that it burns out, I can always replace this with a OEM one, but I'm gonna try this just to see what it does, see what it works like. What do you guys think? A huge shout out to Mr. J Money, who offered to bore out my cylinders if need be. I haven't received them yet. I expect to receive them within the next week or a couple of weeks, hoping sooner than later so I can get this thing back together. I do have a couple of sets of cylinders, but I've been talking in the comment section with a few of you guys about that. Turns out that none of my cylinders are any good. I had a closer look at them and I wouldn't be able to use any of them safely. So I'm just gonna have to wait to get the cylinders that I ordered from eBay and hope that that works out well. Also, a huge shout out to my Patreons. Much appreciated. Every little bit helps. If you guys want to support me on Patreon, there is a link in the description of every video. That is going to do it for this one. I don't know what the next video is going to be. Hopefully I get the parts and I'm able to get this thing back together and running, because after the last video where I actually got to test it a little bit, I am getting really excited about trying this thing out. See, Rat? I'm coming for you. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.